The Jorvik Viking Festival is one of the city's most historic events. The role of Viking men has long been told in history books, but the role of women has largely been forgotten.
The Viking Festival is a city-wide celebration of Viking culture, and it really allows visitors from all over the world, as well as locals, to discover slightly more about Vikings through a whole programme of different events. So this year, we've decided to look at all the other themes that sometimes go missed by, and we're talking about the untold story of women in the Viking Age. So this year's festival will be slightly different because some of our more academic-sided talks will focus a bit more on the female role in the Viking Age.
But what are some of the roles that Viking women had?
So what we do know about Viking women is that, as you'd expect, they had a role in the home, that they looked after the hearth, they did a lot of textiles and crafts, they did a lot of the cooking and all of those things that you might expect. But what we also see in some archaeological evidence and some of the research is telling us that women might have had a more active role in Viking society than you might have thought. The archaeological research, you can interpret it in lots of different ways, and that's something we're going to explore during the festival. But women might have led people, they might have been fighters as well as being homemakers.
The Icelandic and Norse sagas are often used to understand the story of Vikings, but women aren't at the forefront of these tales.
So they've been overlooked, I suppose, because these stories have been about war and of tribulation and fire and trials and all that sort of thing, which are written from a certain perspective about, a part of society that makes a good story, I guess. The wars and so on make a great story that people care about for centuries to come. And because the Vikings came to the UK and to the British Isles as a military society, that's what sort of carried on. What we're trying to do with this research and what all of these academics are trying to do is tease out different aspects of society. Women, of course, were half of that society, so we want to know what they contributed to, what they led on, and how they really contributed to the fabric of Viking culture.
And it isn't just the historic role of women that the event will be focusing on.
Well, it's important to learn about any culture, but we think, particularly in this city with so much Viking heritage, you look at street names. Coppergate is the street of the cupmakers, for example, and all the bar walls, they represent the old gates of the city. And yes, that still goes through medieval times, but Viking culture is inherent. It is so ingrained into this city's livelihood that it's just so important that we think visitors, particularly locals as well, but visitors to this city should learn all about the Vikings and the effect that they had on this city.
The week-long festival will take place from the 20th of February, so over 1,000 years later, the Vikings will be roaming the streets of York once more. York Atkinson, That's TV.